After many years as a wedding stationer, and even now as purely a wax seal enthusiast, you better believe I found some fun ways to play with wax seals and make them even more unique. Today I'm going to share with you 5 of my favorite techniques to take your wax seals to the next level. Let's start off with one of my very favorites. Adding an organic element to wax seals, which is obviously something that's man-made, can be a great way to add a little bit of variety. Whether you're using fresh flowers or dried flowers, which I do recommend dry flowers, it can add a beautiful element. Now, if you're using dried petals, like these rose petals here, I recommend breaking them up. That gives you a little bit more control as you are applying them onto your wax. Then using your favorite wax melting technique here, I'm using the glue gun method. You just pour your hot wax down and then you place the petals on top of the wax while it is still hot. You can kind of place them at random here in the center. I like to do this with a blank or a just kind of a plain stamp because it allows the petals to be kind of the star of the show. But if you want to have a little bit more control, or maybe you really want to use your pattern stamp, then you might consider doing something a little bit more creative. So here I'm placing the petals that I've broken up on the side of one half of the wax. So this just creates a little bit of visual interest. It allows the stamp pattern, so the engraving that's on your stamp, to show a little bit. So here you can see I have the C and then the flowers kind of on the left. Just creates a little bit of visual interest, something that's a little bit more unexpected and unique. Whole flowers follow kind of the same rule of thumb where you can place them carefully here, or you can have, something that is a little bit more artistic or asymmetrical. Playing with whole flowers is an awesome way to play with kind of the relationship with the color of the wax and the flower petals themselves. You can go for something that's a little more monochromatic or something with more contrast, or just really play up your very favorite colors. Another fun thing that you can add to your wax seals that has a little bit of a historical vibe would be a feather. Traditionally, a feather would be applied to a parcel in order to let the postman know that this invitation, this envelope, whatever it is, needs to be given wings, if you will, or delivered very quickly. And so a postman would know something that has a feather on it needs to be given priority. Now, if you're stamping something that's a little trickier, like this feather that has a mind of its own, I recommend adding a little bit of wax beforehand. See how that tiny little bit just kind of holds that feather in place. Now when I apply the final layer of hot wax that I'm going to be placing my final stamp on, I want it to look good. My feather isn't wiggling around. It's already stuck in place. My envelope's not moving. Everything is secure. And what better stamp to go with a feather than my new heron stamp? I love that 3D bird with the feather. Now, something that I have been exploring recently is a raw edge wax seal. To get that raw edge, instead of kind of the perfect circle that you might be familiar with, you just place less wax down than you would normally. You carefully place your stamp down, and when you lift it, see how it has kind of that organic raw edge? This is just something that it kind of has a little bit of a fine art feel. It's a little bit more creative, and it can be a fun way to explore a different look with your wax seals. Now, I know you knew this was coming, right? I love a marbled wax seal. I love that you can play around with different colors. I have a couple of different techniques. This spoon method is probably my favorite, but I'll have a full video tutorial linked down below for this. But a marbled wax seal is such a fun way to add a little bit of color interest, to add something that is truly unique. You can't really get the same pattern ever again. At least I haven't been able to do that, and I've made hundreds of these marbled wax seals. I just love how it's kind of a unique way to play with color, but again, it adds that little bit of difference, a little bit of a unique feel to your stamp. So seen here with my Vintage Peony stamp, as well as with my Blushed Bride stamp. One great way to add a little bit of emphasis to the print on your wax seal is to add a little bit of paint. So in this example, I'm going to be using gold paint to really emphasize the relief that is created with the wax seal. So I will be using my Vintage Peony stamp, so it has the flowers there in relief form. This is easiest because it has a three-dimensional element, so the relief comes up quite a bit. I'm using a flat brush because that will help me to get just the parts that are raised on the wax seal and not, the part that's been pressed down. So I'm just carefully moving across. You can also use paint pens. I know people who've had great success with that, but I already had these elements on hand, and so this is usually what I use if I'm going for a look like this. I have found that I need to go kind of 2 passes across everything, but I have a very light hand. And so I just dab off the excess, and then I go over and do another layer after the first one has dried. Usually by the time I get down from one side to the other, it's all dried out. But I love the effect that kind of the foil look and this more matte colored wax, especially like the blue and the gold. I just think that has such a pretty effect. I hope that these ideas inspired you to play around with and explore wax seals even further. If you have any ideas that I didn't mention, go ahead, leave those in the comment section below. And I would love to know which of these ideas you're most excited to try. And until next time, happy stamping.